Welcome to Book Reviews, where we explore the best books across every genre. I'm Joanna McCann. I'm joined as always by Gerald LeBlanc. Don't forget to grab your free copy of the audiobook using the link in the description below. Let's get started.
All right, so you want to dive into Greta Thunberg's The Climate book? Huh. Ambitious. It's a hefty one, packed with info.
It really is. You're clearly up for a challenge, wanting to get a grip on the climate crisis. And this book, it doesn't mess around. Science, impacts, the whole shebang, even personal stories, it's a lot to process.
No kidding. So think of this deep dive as your climate book cheat sheet. We'll break it down, hit those key takeaways, those mind-blowing facts you'll actually remember.
Those nuggets you can bust out at your next dinner party. Become the climate guru.
Exactly. And you can't talk climate without the science, right? Got to lay that foundation. But the book does it in a way that's, actually engaging.
It throws in those, moments that make you really pay attention.
Right. Okay, this one blew my mind. It's about historical perspective from science journalist Peter Brannon. Imagine, right, Earth's whole existence as 1 year. Big Bang to right now.
Okay, I'm picturing it, this epic timeline.
And now squeeze the entire Industrial Revolution, when our fossil fuel obsession really took off. Ready for this? It fits in the last 1.5 seconds of that year. Last 1.5 seconds. Whoa. Okay, that puts things into perspective. We've messed with the planet system in the blink of an eye, geologically speaking.
And a big culprit in that whole mess, carbon. But here's where it gets interesting. It's not just about CO2, carbon dioxide. The climate book gets into methane, which is like the supercharged sports car of greenhouse gases.
More potent than CO2, even if it doesn't stay in the atmosphere quite as long. It's like methane's a sprinter causing a quick burst of warming, and CO2 is the marathon runner. Its effects linger.
I like that analogy.
And to keep it going, we've got aerosols entering the picture. Now, they actually cool things down by reflecting sunlight. They're like the referees trying to keep things fair.
Trying to. Anyway. But here's the problem. A lot of those aerosols come from the same sources as the greenhouse gases we're worried about. Like, think coal plants. Plus, they're not exactly healthy. Remember smog? Yeah, aerosols.
Not the solution, then.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this complex dance of gases and particles, but then there's the real MVP, Earth's climate system. The climate book does a great job illustrating this, especially the water cycle, right? The whole evaporation condensation thing.
Yeah. But the book makes it real, It emphasizes how a warmer world throws the whole cycle out of whack. We're not just talking about things getting a tad toasty, we're talking extremes. Huge downpours, crazy floods, droughts that would make the Dust Bowl look tame.
Intense. And speaking of intense, there's the ice. This book made me think about ice in a whole new way, especially those massive ice sheets in Antarctica.
They're huge and slow-moving, but the impact.
Did you know if all that ice melted, sea levels would rise by almost 60 meters.
60 meters. It's hard to even picture that. And that's why understanding the difference between those ice sheets, ice shelves, and glaciers is crucial. They all contribute to rising sea levels, but at different paces. Right now, the biggest contributor is actually the ocean's thermal expansion. As it absorbs heat, it expands, taking up more space.
Like heating up a balloon. The air expands, balloon gets bigger. Except now, it's the entire planet feeling the squeeze. And we're just scratching the surface here. The climate book doesn't stop at the science. It dives into how these changes impact people's lives.
And those impacts, way closer at home than you might think.
It's easy to get lost in the enormity of it all, climate change. But the climate book does this amazing thing. It brings it back down to earth, literally, by telling these personal stories.
Yeah, it reminds us it's not just abstract data and graphs. It's about real people, real lives being flipped upside down.
Totally. And sometimes those impacts are like sneakier than a hurricane, right? Like that chapter on heat and illness.
Oh, yeah, that one got me thinking. I mean, everyone knows heat waves are bad news, but the book really drives home how even a small temperature increase can be dangerous.
It's like this silent threat, right? Making existing health problems even worse, heart issues, respiratory stuff. And it's not like everyone's equally at risk. The book digs into environmental racism.
Absolutely. Communities of color, low-income communities, they often end up closer to pollution, stuck in urban heat islands.
So they get hit harder by heat waves, air pollution, the works. It's not fair. That story about Chauncey from Florida stuck with me.
The young boy, right, with asthma?
Yeah, and living near a coal plant. Talk about adding fuel to the fire, literally. His asthma is through the roof because of the air quality. Plus, his community is in a hurricane zone, which climate change is only making worse.
It's like a perfect storm of challenges, all connected. And then there's the looming crisis of climate migration, the story of Oscar from El Salvador. Heavy stuff.
The way he described his village, saying, "The earth is tired," stuck with me. It just makes it real. People are being uprooted right now because of climate change.
Losing their homes, their livelihoods, and the projections are pretty grim. The book mentions that by 2070, almost 20% of the planet could be unlivable. Extreme heat, drought, the works. We're talking billions of people displaced.
Billions. It's hard to wrap your head around. And it's not even just the direct impacts, right? The climate book talks about how climate change is like a threat multiplier, making existing problems even worse.
For sure, because when resources get scarce, tensions rise. The book uses the example of the Sahel region in Africa. More droughts, less water, more conflict between farmers and herders, all competing for the same shrinking resources.
It's all connected. Climate change is like the first domino, and it sets off this chain reaction. So with all this doom and gloom, does the climate book offer any hope, any solutions?
It does, but not in a here's the easy answer kind of way. And that's actually what makes it so compelling. The book doesn't sugarcoat anything. It acknowledges how huge this challenge is, how we need to face some hard truths about how we live and what we value.
Okay, no easy answers, I'm hearing you. But we can't just throw in the towel, right? There's got to be a way forward. What's the climate book say we do about all this? Is it all about individual actions? Ditching plastic, remembering our reusable bags?
It touches on that stuff for sure, but it's pretty blunt. Individual actions aren't going to cut it. Greta Thunberg doesn't mince words. She's all about systemic change, like massive shifts in how we get our energy, how we transport stuff. Even our whole economic system needs a rethink, she says.
Unprecedented changes.
Yeah.
That's how the IPCC put it. But what does that even look like, practically speaking? Does the book get into specifics?
It does, and that's where it gets really interesting. It makes you question some pretty fundamental assumptions, like our reliance on technology to swoop in and save the day, take renewable energy. Yeah, we're seeing more solar panels, wind turbines, which is great, but the book reminds us we're still hooked on fossil fuels.
It's like we're trying to put out a fire while still holding a lit match. We hear so much about green tech, but are we actually ditching fossil fuels fast enough? The climate book seems skeptical.
Oh yeah, it's wary of what it calls greenwashing. Corporations, even governments, trying to look eco-friendly without actually changing much. There's a whole section on how advertising plays into this, how it fuels consumerism, makes us think we need to buy more and more stuff that ultimately harms the planet.
Buying our way out of the problem. Eco-friendly, this, sustainable, that. But maybe it's all just a Band-Aid on a bigger wound.
So if individual changes aren't enough, and even tech isn't some magic bullet, where does that leave us?
That's the million-dollar question. And the climate book doesn't shy away from it. It's about rethinking our whole relationship with stuff, with consumption. The idea that we can have endless economic growth on a finite planet, it challenges that head on, invites us to explore different ways of measuring progress. Instead of how do we make the economy bigger, it's how do we build a thriving society within the limits of what the planet can handle.
Right on. The book also spends time on our food systems. The impact of what we eat, especially animal agriculture, often gets overlooked.
Yeah, we think about cars, energy, but our plates, our food choices matter too.
Huge impact. Shifting to more plant-based diets, it's a big lever we can pull. Less meat, more plants. Reduces emissions, frees up land. It's a win-win.
So I'm hearing you big changes are needed, systemic changes. But how do we get there? From these ideas to actual, reality, what's the climate book suggest?
It's about collective action. That's a big one. Individual choices matter, but it's about coming together as communities, as nations, as a global society, and demanding change.
Like those climate strikes Greta Thunberg sparked. People power, putting pressure on those in charge.
Exactly. Using our voices, our votes, our wallets even to shift the balance, making sustainability the norm, not some niche thing. The climate book reminds us we're not just along for the ride on this planet. We have agency. We can shape the future.
Love that agency. It's empowering. So for our listener who's taken this whirlwind tour of the climate book with us, what's the main takeaway?
For me, it's informed action, knowing the science, yes, but also having empathy for those hit hardest by climate change. It's complex, no doubt, but the solutions are out there. We just have to fight for them.
Informed action, fueled by knowledge and compassion. I like it. That's a great note to end on. So listener, as you keep exploring the climate book, remember, Every action, big or small, creates a ripple effect. You have the power to be a part of the solution.
And that's our summary for today. We hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to grab your free copy of the audiobook using the link in the description below. See you next time.